time fight coming up this weekend at lightweight. We have the former featherweight king, and I say that with a little bit of a grain of salt. And Renato Moicano, he's taking on Jai Herbert, the Black Country banger, coming out of Wolverhampton. Go Wolves. I'm not a Wolverhampton fan. I actually like Tottenham. And then I just probably lost a lot of the viewers right there, so apologies where they are necessary. But Matt, for Jai Herbert coming into the UFC, you knew how good he was going to be. I mean, this guy has excellent Muay Thai. He's a very, very accredited striker. He took on a really, really good level of competition over with Cage Warriors, their former champion. And I mean, you look at the loss. Rhys McKee back in 2016. You might snicker. You might go, Craig, Matt, Rhys McKee sucks. He was off on the UFC.
He's not great.
You were right about his UFC run, but back with Cage Warriors, he was pretty good, and he went on a tiny little run, and I bet you he'll end up back in the UFC before you know it. But you look at that, he comes back, he picks up big wins. Joe McColgan's a big win. Steve O'Keefe's a big win. Jack Grant's a big win. Ken Carrizosa, former UFC fighter, you like to see it. But again, former champion from the organization that's produced a lot of really good talent. Lightweight champ back in 2019. Beats Ken Carrizosa where he's a minus 185 favorite. And then he was originally supposed to take on Mark Jacasey back in, early last year. That card canceled due to the pandemic. So he ends up with old Massaranduba. And Matt, Massaranduba gonna Massaranduba, and Herb Dean gonna watch.
Turns out 40-year-old men can still beat up people? I don't know if that's the tagline, but still, for Jai Herbert, it was weird because Cage Warriors normally brings over top tier talent when they do make their way over to the UFC. I don't want to say all the time, but for the most part, when Cage Warriors champions come to the UFC, they normally have at least a good run in them, or an entertaining run in them. I understand there's been some exceptions out there, but for the most part, Cage Warriors have brought in a lot of top tier talent. Look at Mason Jones, for instance, former Cage Warriors champion. Now losing via no contest, so maybe not the best fighter I could have brought up. But besides that, for Jai Herbert, I had high hopes for him coming into the UFC. And against Massaranduba, I just kind of expect him to win easily. Because, listen, you're fighting a 40-year-old at 155. I know Trinaldo missed weight. But again, and that really, I thought, okay, that just plays more into Herbert's going to win. You have an older guy. He's not really training that much. He's not going to be there. No one was more surprised than me when Massaranduba landed that overhand left. It was one of the nicest punches you're ever going to land in a fight. He flatlined poor Jai Herbert. And Herb Dean, who is sometimes good at his job, but sometimes not, we have to be critical of him when he isn't, was not doing his job very well that fight. Jai Herbert ate quite a few shots after the bell, and they were super unnecessary. And for me, that's the question mark around Jai Herbert. I don't want to steal any of your thunder, Craig, because you kind of brought this up before we started filming. So if you want to get rid of this, let me know. Jai Herbert doesn't have a great chin. And for me, that's a really big concern. When he does take on guys, and listen, Renato Moicano is not the type of guy who can go out there and really take advantage of it. Renato Moicano is a crisp striker. Technically, he's a very good one, but Renato Moicano is not a guy who goes out there looking to knock you out. He doesn't throw punches looking to, wow, I'm going to knock you down like a Vanderlei Silva. I was looking at Renato Moicano and comparing more of like a Michael Bisping, where if he does knock you out, it's going to have to be by accumulation. And Moicano's weird because he doesn't even have a single TKO victory on his record for being a decent striker. It's weird. For Moicano, he has all those skill sets that you really appreciate and you look for when you want to talk about a top tier fighter. It's just, he seems to lack all the strange, like, little intangibles that you talk about when you do talk about those top 10, top 5 fighters. But it is wild that Renato Moicano, A, has a win over Calvin Kattar, B, headlined a UFC event against the Korean Zombie, and C, has fought Jose Aldo. Like, the UFC has given Renato Moicano plenty of opportunities to really be a headlining type of a fighter. He fought Brian Ortega, to bring up another guy. Like, he's fought those A-list...
beat him.
Exactly. He's fought those A-list fighters. He just always seems to come up short when he does fight the top tier fighters.
Jai Herbert, it's just unfortunate because he left the belt with Cage Warriors. Did he leave the chin? I just look at that fight, and if you look at Jai Herbert, he comes out of Renegade Jiu-Jitsu. We talked about that gym so much because Aiden Lee just fought Aaron Pico. He lost. You had Tom Breeze, who didn't make it to the octagon for his last fight. Very unfortunate. I really like watching Tom Breeze fight, so it sucked. Fabian Edwards and Leon Edwards, and for Jai Herbert, well, he had the chin of the Massaranduba fight, like 5th round Leon Edwards in his last fight. So you look at that gym, all sorts of great talent, oozing with talent. I can't stress that enough. For Jai Herbert, I know exactly how good his striking is. Is he able to make some leaps and gains and bounds in his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu department to take on Moicano? Because again, Moicano's a crisp striker, but we've seen the chin kind of falter lately. Again, he has 4 losses in his career. 3 of them are in his last 5 fights. Loses to Aldo by TKO. Loses to Korean Zombie by TKO really early. and lost to Fiziev by TKO, where...
If you're going to get knocked out by any three men, though, who weigh between 145 and 155 pounds, those would be the three that are probably going to do it.
Can't say I took Fiziev to win in that fight against Moicano, so full transparency. But again, for Moicano, you look at it. Almost beat Brian Ortega until he didn't.
And beat Calvin Kattar.
You look at the recent wins. He submitted Cub Swanson. Well, that hardly ever happens. He submitted Damir Hadzovic. Well, that happens. But it was just the way that it did. It was so slippery. It was so slick. For Moicano, again, the ceiling's there. And at 55, it looked great against Hadzovic the one time. But then it regressed against a really good striker and a kickboxer in Fiziev. You got a great Muay Thai at a Jai Herbert. Maybe something kind of jives there. I just want to bring up the odds because for Moicano, he opened a minus 190 favorite. He's minus 247 right now. For Jai Herbert, open a plus 165. He's a plus 198. And if we have a look at the Topology votes, they're a surprise to us as they are to you. Yikes. 964 total votes, 79% Moicano, 53% by submission for the 21% that have Jai Herbert to win, 72% by knockout. Makes sense?
It does. Now, first thing that I just got to get out of the way, let's never compare Fiziev and Jai Herbert ever again. Just very different fights. Strikers, but Fiziev is like that guy when it comes to pure striking at 155. And for Herbert, listen, he does have some of the intangibles when it comes to grappling. I don't think he can go out there and out-grapple Renato Moicano, though. And with Moicano, it's weird, because again, we talk about his striking, and I feel like the striking is at the forefront of his skill set, but most of his wins do come by submission, and even like split decision. He's a guy who has found himself, especially earlier on in his career, in oddly close fights, but I will say that the little run that he went on with the wins over Kattar and Swanson, like, that was the fighter who you thought, okay, maybe he can go on a really long run. I like the leg kicks in the Kattar fight. I like his counter boxing in the Kattar fight. I think if we get that same version at 155 at any point, then Renato Moicano could find himself in the top 15 again. But it's really hard for me to say that we're ever going to see that version. Listen, I think he's going to beat Jai Herbert this weekend. That'll be my official pick. But I don't really know where we go with Moicano because it feels like the UFC has marketed him. They have given him a lot of opportunities to kind of not be a face at 145 or anything, but at least be a guy who, hey, on short notice, we need a main event or a co-main event slot. Renato Moicano can fight ranked fighter X, and we can fill that. He hasn't been able to live up to those aspirations yet, and that's the only hesitation I have with my prediction for this fight.
You look at it for Moicano, I mean, you can't go anywhere but up when you beat Tom Ninamaki, one of the best to ever do it. But I'm in agreement with Renato Moicano. It is a really tricky fight to go with. But yeah, I mean, if you're Jai Herbert and you beat Renato Moicano, you're fast-tracking yourself. You're going to get a better fighter than, well, the name of Moicano or even somebody that was in the skill level of a Massaranduba. You're into a big fight your next time out. So I can't wait for this one. But going with Brazil's Moicano to get the win, I think, again, everything combined is going to be a little bit of a difference maker here, but if Herbert's able to finish him and finish him early, maybe you like that under, whether or not your book has it set at 1.5 or 2.5, maybe you have a look at that one. We'll talk about that on Question Mark Kick. So make sure you check back in, especially for this fight on Saturday, but both of us right now at the start of the week going with Renato Moicano to get the win. Can't wait for this main card. Big fights. Danilo Marques taking on Fortis MMA's Kennedy Nzechukwu. You also have in the main event, Ciryl Gane taking on Alexander Volkov. You're not going to want to miss that. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.